Now we're going to create a new script, a fish script that will tie all of our existing code together and make our fish work properly along the spline and shoot at our enemies. We're going to start by taking the spline attack point script, and I'm going to move this in my scripts folder. It got generated into the root. And then I'm going to go into the scripts folder, right click, and we'll create a new C# script, and we'll call that fish with a capital F. We're going to open that script up, and we're going to add a couple references. First, we're going to need a reference to our spline animator. Let's get rid of this start method completely. We'll add a serialized field that references our spline animator, or spline animate. And then we need a reference to our animator because we're going to want to turn that attack animation on and off with that trigger, or really just turn it on with the trigger. So we'll get a reference to our animator. And then we're also going to need a reference to the attack data. So we're going to need that spline attack. There we go, attack points. Now to keep track of where we're going to attack next, we're going to use two different variables. We'll create a float that has our next attack point. So let's do that now. Float underscore next attack point. This will be the time along our spline where we'll attack. So it'll probably be at, I think right now we have one at 0 that we'll probably remove, but then we'll have our 0.2 and then 0.3 or whatever it was for our next attack and so on. That's going to store that value right there so we can do some very quick, easy comparison. We're also going to keep track of all of our next attack points, or all of our available attack points, and we're going to do that in a queue this time. So we'll use a queue, Q-U-E-U-E, of type float, and we'll call this attack points. This will be all of our available attack points that we have, and we're going to fill this by grabbing it from our spline attack points. Let's do that in the start method. We'll add a start. I just deleted it, but we'll add a new start, and inside that start we'll add a method called refresh attack points. This is going to give us a new queue, a new set of all of our attack points available that we can start just pulling objects out of. We can start pulling them out, run one after another. We could use a list or an array or an index as well. I just felt like using a queue this time. So we're going to put them into a queue and then just pull from there. So in our refresh attack points, we'll say underscore attack points equals, and we'll give it a new queue. And we're just going to pass in our, or actually, let's get this directly from... Let's get this from the spline attack points. So we'll say attack points equals spline attack points dot get as queue. And then we'll generate a method to get that back as a queue. So I'll select the get as queue, hit Alt Enter, generate a method. And then here we'll return a new queue and pass in our attack points. What this will do is give us a new set of all of our attack points in just a collection that we can pop and pull things from until it's empty. Again, we could use integers and an array-based thing, but I want to show one other slightly less memory optimized way to do things as well. So we've got our attack points here, and the first thing that we're going to need to do is grab the first attack point out of there and make that be our next attack point. So we'll say underscore next attack point equals underscore attack points dot DQ. That's going to pull the first one right out of that list. Now that we've got our next attack point, we can just check in our update to see if we've passed that attack point. If we have, we can fire off an attack and grab the next point. If we haven't, then we don't really have to do anything. So to do that, we're going to need to figure out how far along the spline we are. So we'll say var elapsed equals, and we want to get this data from our animator, or our spline animate script. So we'll say spline animate, and there's a normalized time on here. This will give us a value of how long it's gone all the way across. So it'll be 0 at the beginning, 1 at the end, but on the second loop through, it's going to be 2. And on the third loop through, it's going to be 3, and so on. So if we want to go halfway through the second loop, that would be at 1.5, and we really want a value of 0.5. We're not storing all of the every loop value in our attack points. We're just storing the 0 to 1 value. So to do that, we'll use the modulus statement, or the percent, and a 1. That's going to get rid of everything before the decimal point and just give us back the decimal for how much has elapsed. Then we'll say if elapsed is greater than or equal to our next attack point, well, then we want to do an attack. So we'll tell our animator to set its attack trigger. So say set trigger, and remember we named that attack. And then we want our next attack point to be set, but we only can set that if we actually have attack points available. So we'll say if underscore attack points dot any. Make sure that we add the using system.link statement up there. It automatically added for me here. So if we have attack points, then we'll say next attack point equals attack points.dq. And if we don't have any, so we'll say else, well, then we should probably refresh our attack points and just get some new attack points. Let's get rid of those braces, save and do a build. And now we should expect to see our fish playing his animation. Let's go check it out. Of course, first we'll need to add the fish script and then assign our references like the spline animate, our animator child, and the spline attack points that we're going to be following. We'll save and press play. And here we go. We can see our fish swimming along. Let's watch him animate. See, he does his animations, but there's a little bit of a delay there too. One thing we want to make sure that we don't have is the has exit time checked for this animation transition. We want to make sure that he does the transition immediately and he doesn't keep getting a reset back out of it. Now the final thing to do is make our fish actually shoot. We can see here that he's got an animation event that's firing off and nothing listening to it. If we go look at our animation, let's go find that attack roll fish animation real quick. Go to our animation window, select the fish and go to attack roll. Let's move this animator controller out of the way. You can see that we've got an animation event right here, which is, I believe, right at the point where he's, let's stop playing, right at the point where he's doing the actual attack, where he does that kind of a spin move where he should actually be firing it off. So it's right there. So let's hook this up to an attack. And remember, we have that shoot animation wrapper. So we'll go to our base object here, add the shoot animation wrapper, and then we can select our animation and just go find shoot animation wrapper, methods, shoot, to call that shoot and then pass it up to our fish object. We'll go up to our fish now, and then in our start method, we can just register for that, just like we did with the other ones. Say get component in children, shoot animation wrapper, dot on shoot plus equals shoot spikes. And then we'll generate a method for it. And here we'll say debug.log shoot spikes. Let's save that off, see if our log entry comes, and then in the next section, we'll add our spikes and finish up our fish. First, we want to just make sure that he's actually trying to fire off and the animation is all working properly and everything's hooked up. Let's go check it out one more time. There's our fish reloading his domain. Go back into the scene view and see our fish doing a spin, and he's calling shoot spikes, looking good. Let's stop playing, go into plastic and commit. Fish is ready to shoot spikes. And I'll check that in and save our scene. Okay, let's try checking that in one more time. There we go.